What's up, everybody? It's Two Lock Sports. It's Friday or Thursday. I don't know what day it is anymore. I just stay home all the time, so kind of lose track of days. It is Thursday. We got ourselves a little 4-game slate here tonight, and wanted to run it back another day here and give you guys a little bit of a video picks and pivots breakdown, talk a little bit about the slate, talk a lot more about process, about projections, about tools, about how to build lineups. And we're going to use today's slate as context. We did this on Tuesday. I'm hoping that we don't get another thing like Tuesday. We're halfway through the show. D'Angelo Russell decides to get ruled out, but let's see if I get a little bit luckier today. So before we start, wanted to make sure you guys saw, I tweeted this out today. Check it out at Two Lock Sports. All of our content at Win Daily Sports for the NBA is free this week. We are doing a promo for this week, giving all of our content away for free. We have 4 games tonight, and we have 3 articles. We have GPP gems from Ghost. We got Adam's Cash Game Core. We got picks and pivots from me. And I want to make sure you guys are checking this out. Tomorrow is the final day that we're doing this. And if you like what you see, you like the content, if you've been in our Discord, which is free for the first 7 days, if this is something that you're finding that's helping you, sign up. We have a promo code right now, promo code BOWL55 in order of the Super Bowl. You get 55% off your first month. $13.50 gives you all access to every sport that we have for DFS with all of our content, all of our projections, all of our cheat sheets, our models, everything. So come on in and check it out for $13, guys. There's not a better deal in the industry. Go find one. You're not gonna. So get it now before it goes away. And let's get into this slate and talk a little bit about what we've got. So first and foremost, I see Zach in the chat. I'm ready to make some bread last night. Me too, my friend. Me too. John, I'm here. I'm here for the slate breakdowns. I love it. Welcome, guys. Thank you for joining. Hopefully these are helpful and they continue to be helpful. So when you look at tonight's slate, it's interesting because, and I like doing these slate breakdowns when we get something more like a 3 or a 4 game slate. This week's been weird in that you've got, you had a big slate on Monday, then a 3-gamer on Tuesday, then a 12-gamer last night, then a 4-gamer today. And it kind of makes the process difficult in NBA because, you're used to this daily grind, but the reality is the slate size is going to dictate kind of how you play it every day. And with these slates changing so drastically in size day after day, it really changes the mindset. Yesterday on a 12-game slate, you've got this massive player pool and you've got all this value and all these moving parts. On a 4-game slate like this or a 3-game slate like we had on Tuesday, you just don't have as much. So what you end up finding, or at least in my opinion, what you end up seeing is people tinker too much on these slates. They end up talking themselves off of the best plays. And I see it all the time in Discord. It's like, you'll see somebody like, I don't know, I can't even think about a name, but, I'll throw, let's see, we'll go all the way down. Somebody's going to, I guarantee it because it'll happen. Somebody's going to come into Discord today and be like, what do you guys think of Jared Dudley tonight? Like sneaky play? Like, no, sneaky is not always smart. And on these slates, I feel like people tend to outthink themselves. So my recommendation for you is to try and block out the noise, but think about how tonight you can build a lineup that's not just, one that you like the individual plays, but one that you can see how it fits in from an entire slate build. So I've put my article out there so you guys can go check it out. I'm not just going to regurgitate what I said. Adam's put his out and it's fantastic, as it always is, as is Ghost's, always incredible stuff. For the most part, I'd say we're actually in lockstep today, with one exception. Adam wrote his from a cash game perspective, and Ghost and I are looking at it more from a GPP perspective. And I bring that up because player number one, the number one decision point you're going to have to make tonight is Damian Lillard. And I think, Adam, as a cash game guy, made the point that this is like player number one in your core. And I'm not necessarily sure you can argue against that. On this slate, I think raw points matter when you get to these small slates. So getting a guy like Dame is obviously going to be a tremendous starting point. But I brought this up in my article today that, the reality is these last 4 games since McCollum's gone out, I don't know if Dame's really worth the price. He's certainly got the floor, which again is why Adam's talking about him from a cash game perspective. But, the last 4 games, he's putting up, 57, 50, 60, and 50. None of those are hitting value or making him a must play at nearly 11K on DraftKings. And so while the play is obviously strong, there is a lot of usage. There's all the volume. I mean, you can see it here. Look at the minutes, look at the volume. But the production hasn't been to a point where you necessarily have had to have him. So, while I understand what Adam is saying from a cash game perspective, I think Ghost and I have been on the train today of maybe fading Dame and then looking at potential spots for leverage. And I bring this concept of leverage up sometimes in my article. It's a word you hear people use. It's probably overused, like most words tend to be in the DFS industry where people use them just to make themselves sound smart. But I can tell you that there's a lot of logic in this concept of leverage. And I think this, if you guys have not thought through this process before, I think this is a good one. So if you're not going to play Dame, you can do one of two things. One, you can just say, I'm going to fade him and I'm going to hope that Steph Curry or LeBron or whoever I pivot to is going to be the better top play. The other thing you can do is not only fade, but also double down and say, I'm going to get the leverage off of Dame. Now, what does that mean? Now, again, look back at what Damian Lillard is. He's a fantastic player, right? And he's going to get you peripheral statistics. But his ceiling games are going to come when he is shooting a lot and when there's a ton of efficiency, right? And you'll see it here, like this game against Sacramento. This was one where McCollum did play. But, he's getting 70 DraftKings points on 40 real points, shooting the ball, nearly 50% with 23 shot attempts. So what does that mean? Dame gets to his ceiling when he's scoring, okay? So how do you get leverage against that? Well, very simple. You have to look at the other guys on this team who shoot. And with Robert Covington, we know he's already out tonight. There are a couple guys here, and I'm just going to start to click some of them in, that I think give you multiple paths for a slate, so some direct leverage off of Lillard, right? If Lillard's not scoring, who is going to be, right? And I think this is where guys like Carmelo, to me, is the ideal kind of first person that you look in. Now, last game, he shot the ball 21 times starting for Covington. And while tonight, Rodney Hood is expected to be back. He did not play in that game, so remember that as you're looking at game logs. It's not necessarily a one-to-one comparator. So, but the logic here still holds. If Melo gets hot, this dude's going to shoot, and he's going to shoot it 1 billion times. So I love the idea of using Carmelo as direct leverage. The other guy here is Rodney Hood. Again, this is somebody now, he didn't play last game, but he's expected to play tonight. But you can see in the games, look back at the San Antonio game. He shot the ball 14 times, put up 28 DraftKings points. If all of a sudden, if Rodney Hood's shooting the ball 15 times and Carmelo's shooting the ball 20 plus times, guess what, guys? Those 35 shot attempts are not going to Damian Lillard. And if Damian Lillard is not getting his 25 to 30 shot attempts, he's likely not going to get you that 60, 70 DK point game that's going to pay it off. So when you're looking through this, I think these become really interesting leverage spots. And two other guys that we were talking about today in Discord, Cantor, I think, is an incredibly interesting leverage play. Ghost did a great job of writing him up, so I'm not going to steal his thunder at all. But I think he's a fantastic option at kind of a weird price point against Houston. That Houston's going to run. They've got Christian Wood is back tonight, and they've got DeMarcus Cousins back. So it's very likely that you're going to see Cantor out on the court there for 30 plus minutes again. Now, will he get 23 rebounds like he did against OKC? I'm not sure you can necessarily assume that's going to happen again. But, you've got a guy here who's got demonstrated 50-point upside in 2 of his last 4 games. And what I like about Cantor is he becomes kind of a stacking partner with Anthony and Hood, because if you think about it, how does Cantor get there? It's not necessarily through scoring. Look at his 50-point games. They're coming when he's having incredibly high upside rebounding games and block shots. So you can use Cantor alongside Carmelo and Hood and go kind of all in on this like Portland stack without including Dame. And you're really capturing a path where they can all see ceiling. And I like that idea. This was something that Ghost laid out, and I really like it. The last guy to talk about kind of on Portland is Anthony Simons or Simmons. I don't know how you pronounce it, but whatever. We're not here for grammar lessons. The interesting component here is there's definitely a role for him, and I'm a little worried that there'll be some game log chasing. This was a spot that we talked about in Discord, really liking him last game when Hood was out, because what you knew was going to happen was Melo was going to go to the first team, starting for Covington, and then Trent was going to go to the first team. And what that meant was now he got all the second team usage. And look at those shot attempts, 17 shot attempts, 10 3-point attempts, and put up a ceiling game. The only kind of cold water that I'll splash on him is with Hood back tonight. Trent moves back to the second team, so his path to kind of dominating that second team usage is not necessarily as easy as it was a game ago. But again, same concept. If you're not playing Dame, these are the kinds of guys, high volume scorers, that I think make sense to be the direct leverage against them. Now, having said that, if you're playing Dame, I would not play any of Hood, Melo, or Simmons. I just wouldn't. Now, if you're going to play Dame, I think you can play Cantor with him, but you have to think through those pairings. And guys, on 4-game slates, I talk about this all the time in our Discord. Nothing drives me nuts more than when people just post a lineup and just say thoughts. On a 4-game slate, this is the perfect opportunity for you to think through strategy and lineup building. So, this is one path that I would go if you're looking to get Portland builds. Going with this kind of onslaught and leaving Dame out of it, I think is perfectly fine. Now, if you say Cantor's my guy, okay, cool. Then I think you need to, and you want to go away from the other guys and you want Dame, I think that this is a really viable build, starting point where you could go Dame and Cantor together. The one difficult part that I see tonight is I actually find myself disliking more spots than I like. If you look at the game, you look at the teams that are on this slate, right? We talked about Portland. If I look at Houston, I just have very little interest in them tonight. And it's not because I don't like the players as they are as individuals or their DFS upside, because we know they all have it. But this is going to be the first time in a long time that this team is healthy. And this was a team that we were targeting a lot because they weren't healthy and because there was so much usage and there was so much value. You get Christian Wood back, kind of takes Boogie out of play, especially at 7,200. Now you've got Oladipo and Wall are back and sharing the backcourt together. Wall is still on this minutes restriction, at least he was as of last game. So it's like you're not really sure if there's certainly ceiling there for 7.3K, but if he's not playing all the minutes and now you've got all these guys healthy, Houston's a team to me tonight that I'm kind of just ignoring. I don't really like anyone, unless we get news, and, I'm checking my phone because I'm sure since we've been live, like every single person has been, knocked out. No, thank God nobody's been ruled out. So, the one thing I will say with Houston is I just think it's a stay away spot unless we get news. So again, going down the path of teams I don't want to play, I'm not super interested in Detroit either, against the Lakers. With one exception, I do really like the idea of playing Mason Plumlee tonight. And this is more because I think it's a price enforcing kind of thing on the Detroit side. Like his price has now come down to under 5K. He's 4,800. This is a guy who's going to play, strong minutes every night. He's basically like a walking double-double at this point. And what's interesting with him is, the Lakers are a big team. You've got LeBron and you've got AD, but you've got Gasol and you've got Harrell. So this is a team where they're going to need his size. And so he's one of the few guys that I actually like from this team. And then I talked about this in my article. Really the only thing that I'm interested in on the Lakers side is Anthony Davis. And this is just price enforcing. AD at 8,900 is just silly. And there's so much path for profit here on a 4-game slate. You can talk blowout risk. You can talk all those things. Just, I think this is a spot where you need to look at just the talent and understand that, putting him in isn't even cost prohibitive. you can put him in with other stars, and it's just not super hard to do. So, for the Lakers and Detroit, that's kind of like, when I looked at my player pool, that was really where it is. The Clippers and Miami, I got to be honest, I don't like anyone. I don't think I'm going to touch this game unless we get some news that, maybe some of the Miami guys don't come back. There's the potential we could see guys like Jimmy Butler come back tonight. Dragic didn't play last night. If he plays tonight, it just kind of kills everything. And, the Clippers, it's the same spot as 2 nights ago where DraftKings did a really good job of pricing these guys up. And I think because of that, I'm not super interested in paying the premium for them in what is, a low total and slow paced game. I'm not really interested. This is one of those games I'm probably just crossing off, maybe just taking some cheap value if I can find it on the Miami side. The game that I really like, though, and we were talking about this in Discord, I talked about this in my article, is this Golden State Phoenix. And I think it's by far my favorite spot to attack on the slate, not just because of, it's got a high total, it's got the fast pace, kind of all of those things. But I think when you compare it to Portland and Houston, I like the pricing far better in this game than I do in Portland, Houston, because I just don't love the Houston side of that game. I think they're overpriced, where I feel like there's still profit on the guys in Golden State and Phoenix. So, one of the things that I looked at today was if I'm not really interested in paying up for Dame, I think the guy that I want, and Ghost hit this on the head, I think the first guy that you need to put in is going to be Steph. I just love this spot for him. And, I think when you have these smaller slates, you have to anchor to stars. It's every time these raw points projections matter. So I would recommend, no matter what you land on tonight, making sure that you have two to three guys that have kind of that 50 plus ceiling in your builds. So, that's one place that I was starting to see Brian in chat. Over under players that make it in the floor after a 2-lock live. Yeah, gotta love how I'm waiting for my phone to go off with, see how many people get ruled out as I'm talking about this. But anyway, I like this spot for Steph. And what I like about this game is that, when you run it back on the Phoenix side, there is just a lot of very cost-effective plays with ceiling. And first guy into my build on this side is going to be Ayton. This was a play we talked about yesterday, and we were, a bunch of us were on it yesterday, and from an expert perspective here at Win Daily. But we caveated that with it was understanding that Al Horford would be out. When Al Horford got ruled in, it was a spot that became far less interesting, and he didn't have a good game. You can see it. But I think tonight against Golden State, this is the perfect get right spot for Ayton. I think when you look at what Golden State has been really bad at, and I talked about this in my article today, was defending the center position. They've been giving up, 40 to 50 point games to guys that are playing sub 30 minutes. And I'm talking about guys like Naz Reid, Montrezl Harrell. These guys are putting up 40, 45 DK points in under 30 minutes. Take a look at what Ayton does. He's going to play 35 minutes a night. The only center to play 30 plus minutes against the Warriors the last 2 weeks was Nikola Jokic, and he put up 65 DK points. They're not going to have an answer for him inside. And so I think tonight he is the perfect starting point. So right now my core is starting this way with Curry and Ayton. The next piece in for me is going to be a guard, and it's going to be a guard from Phoenix, but I'm just not sure who it is quite yet. The question is whether or not it's going to be Devin Booker or Chris Paul. It sounds like Booker is due back. If he is back, I think 8,300 is far too cheap for a player of his caliber. If he's out, then I just simply go to Chris Paul. I talked about this in my article, putting these guys at guard. Again, look at the slate. Look at the times that these games are, 7:30, 8 o'clock, and then you got the lone game at 10 o'clock. We might not get Devin Booker news before lock. The worst thing that you could do would be to do this. Put Devin Booker at shooting guard and say, well, I can pivot out later. Well, guess what? The pivot is Chris Paul. Chris Paul does not have shooting guard eligibility. So later, when you go to make this move, you won't be able to make that switch. So start your builds by putting in Devin Booker. And I used Booker instead of Chris Paul too, because Booker's $300 more. So any build that you do and kind of set aside, you already know you can not only pivot to Paul at the same position here at guard, but you know you have the dollars for him. Versus if you build with the money from Chris Paul, you'd have to make sure you leave 300 on the table, which is fine. You can do that too. But if you don't leave 300 on the table, you don't have that easy swap. So again, this is just kind of the way you have to think through DraftKings. And on smaller slates like this, you get a little bit more time to think through that. So I love the idea of putting in Booker and locking in kind of this three-man core. This is the stack that I absolutely love tonight. And I talked about kind of the next man in for me was going to be Anthony Davis, and it was because of the price enforcement. I don't necessarily love the spot against Detroit, but I think this is a spot that we can see a ceiling for him. But when you think about it, you're looking at a guy to get, if he can get 55 DK points, he's hitting 6x value at this price. And you saw it in similar spots, like against Chicago with 55 DK points in 28 minutes. I mean, the ceiling hasn't been there for AD and really, or for LeBron this year at all. I mean, they're not having to go there. But at this price point, I don't think you can ignore it. So this is kind of the starting point for me tonight. And then building off of there. So one of the things that I think, for me anyway, the next component in would be trying to find the value. And this is where I end up going back to Portland. So, if you can get in Rodney Hood, I don't think you can you can't get Hood and Melo. But what you could do is go Hood and Simons. But actually, wait a second. I'm going to do this differently because Simons is shooting guard eligible and Hood has small forward eligibility. So this is a component where you can get that we talked about before, right? The direct leverage off of Lillard, but still get high scoring, high ceiling options with these two guys. And I think this gives you some cheap Portland exposure with guys that can easily go for 30 plus DK points. They've done it. And so that's an interesting way. The other spot too that you can look for some value is still in Golden State. I don't necessarily love a lot of options here, but there's a few guys that I wanted to point out. Damian Lee has been a guy in our projections. I'm going to click over to our projections really quickly. At Win Daily, if you look at our projections right now, funny enough, this was updated about 11:43 this morning, so this was the last push. We'll get more pushes as you get closer to lock in his news updates. But right now, he's projecting to be the best value on the slate on DK, nearly 7x projection. So if you go back into this build and we look at Damian Lee, what I find interesting about him is there is a path very clearly for him to not only hit value, but far exceed it. And what was interesting to me is that you look at his run and the game flows, and I've talked about this site probably more than I, talk about any other site, but Popcorn Machine, if you guys aren't using it, please, I'm telling you, it is one of the best free tools that you can find. Popcornmachine.net will give you the game flow of every game. So, one of the things that I wanted to look at when I looked at Damian Lee's game flow was, let me make this a little bigger for you guys. There we go. So if I wanted to look at Damian Lee's game flow to understand if there was any sort of blowout run or anything that was causing the spike last game of 24 minutes. What's interesting is that in this game, you saw Kelly Oubre came out very quick in this game. And if you hover over it, you see it's because he had 2 personal fouls. So he came out early. But it wasn't necessarily anything that impacted Damian Lee's run. They actually just brought in Bazemore to make that direct run early. So Damian Lee came in kind of midway through the first and then ran with the second team usage alongside Oubre, right? And you can see how they overlap here. Now, go back one game prior, And I always like to do this just to make sure it's not a one game kind of sample size. But you see Damian Lee checking in here in the first quarter, towards the end of the first quarter. What was that? About 2 minutes left. And then he got all that second team usage again, alongside Kelly Oubre. I bring this up because if Steph Curry is one of the first guys in, you know what I don't want to do is take a guy who is going to poorly correlate with Curry. If Curry is hitting his ceiling, just like we talked about with Dame, if Curry is hitting his ceiling, it's because he's scoring and hitting a ton of threes, right? So what I don't want is other guys shooting. So Damian Lee is perfect because he's not getting that direct run against Curry. And so, even here, you see in the second half, Curry plays the third. He comes out to start the fourth. Damian Lee runs that second team usage alongside Oubre. So I think, the fact that the projections are on him, the fact that he correlates well with my favorite play, which is Curry, I love the idea of sliding him in here. And then what this does, just as an idea, this leaves us 3,600 for our last spot. Nader and Bay were two guys that we used last night, two of my favorite value plays last night, but I don't know that I would go back to them, to be honest with you, especially if Booker plays. I think if Booker is sitting, then you could go back to Nader, who played, he played 30 minutes 2 nights ago, and last night he played 19 minutes, put up 21 DK points, super strong outing, easy bench roll, but I would only use him there. Or Sadiq Bey is going to go back to the bench because it sounds like Blake Griffin will be back tonight. So this isn't a guy. There is one guy here that I was looking at before. This worries me, I'll be honest. But Precious Achiuwa, last night, dependent again. This is a little bit injury dependent because Miami does have guys who might come back. But Achiuwa is interesting because again, if you look at the game flow, I'm just going to keep taking you to this site until you guys all realize that this is where I do a lot of heavy lifting. What was interesting last night was Achiuwa came in and ran a lot of second team usage. But what was fascinating to me with the first time was that they actually ran him alongside Bam and went double bigs. And it makes sense against Denver, right? Denver's a big team. You've got a big front court between Jokic and Millsap. So it might not necessarily be something that they need tonight against the Clippers. So again, I don't want to bank on this role being there. And there's a lot of peripheral kind of variance. 3 blocks and 2 steals. That's what propped up his night. But it's interesting. He's a guy I kind of have off to the side, not a guy that I'm targeting right away. But hopefully, this is helpful. Now, if you end up in a position, one of the things I like to do is to kind of play out the idea like, all right, well, what if Booker sits? Let me just see what's there if Chris Paul does play. So now I have 3,900. And then actually this could set up pretty interestingly because you could have Iguodala, who again could have a major role if Miami is still banged up. He's going to play his minutes. He's going to give you his 20 DK points. He's not going to win you the slate, but he's not going to hurt you. And also, fun fact, it's his birthday today. And Two Lock Sports loves himself a good old narrative. So hopefully that this was kind of helpful just about how I'm thinking about tonight. Again, I think for me, if I had to kind of build around my core, you're really looking at, I got to take this guy, put him Booker. I would say this is my core, and then it's about kind of playing with the value around it. And we're going to get the value, guys. The value, we just went through a couple paths, and I think there's a lot of different ways that you can clearly see there's going to be value. There'll be even more if Miami has as much guys out as we've seen. So with that being said, I'm going to jump into some questions here. Brian, Core 5, let's say. Bring you up on the screen, buddy. Core 5. So this is interesting. Kendrick Nunn I like the idea if Dragic is out again. I would agree with you. I think he could absolutely be part of your core tonight. I don't know that I'd play LeBron and AD together, though. I just don't. They haven't both really shown me that ceiling. And I think, considering that LeBron is 10-4, personally, if I'm paying up that much, I'm finding the extra 2 to 100 to get to Dame. Otherwise, LeBron's just a guy that's probably not in my pool. If you're not able to switch out, is CP okay to start with? Absolutely. He's perfectly fine. He does not have the same ceiling, though, if Booker's there. So he's fine to use. But personally, I think the way that I have it up on my screen right now is how you need to start, because if Booker's in, I don't see me wanting to play Chris Paul. John, teaching us to fish. This is so good. I love it. I absolutely love it. Ron, let's see. First year playing NBA DFS. Things just haven't clicked yet. Would you recommend just playing free games until I feel more confident and building 300 plus lineups? 300 plus lineups meaning 300 plus DK score. I'm assuming you and your wife are not each mass multi-entering 150. We know that DK doesn't like that. So I'll give you my perspective on this. If you're going to play NBA DFS and if you're going to play NBA DFS, I would always tell you that if you're not going to invest the time in it, don't bother. And I don't mean that to be mean. There is no sport that is more news dependent and requires more kind of real-time adjustment than NBA. NFL, you can kind of, you have a week to set your lineup and get all the news and build everything, and you get inactives, an hour before the game, far less of a rush. Major League Baseball, they put their lineups out 3 and 4 hours before the game. NBA, we're lucky sometimes if we get it 10 minutes before the game. So I bring that up because NBA DFS is one of those sports where if you're not going to invest the time, then I wouldn't play. And I don't mean that just in totality. I mean per day. There are days where, real life happens and you've got a job and you got family obligations and whatever else. If you're not going to be in front of your computer, NBA is just not the sport where 5 minutes before you lock, you pick up your phone and go, yeah, you know what? I'll build a lineup. Nope. Terrible idea. Don't do that. That NBA is the worst sport for that. So Ron, to your point, if you're just playing for fun, then I would absolutely just try the free games. But in order to get good at NBA DFS, I got to be honest, you have to invest the time. So if you're going to play, start smaller stakes. And I would tell you play single entry only, and just get yourself kind of into a mode of, getting into how you're building and seeing what's working, what's not, right? Even if it just means playing, $1 single entry every day. It'll give you at least some reason to kind of invest the time, with an idea that you can win some money. But that's definitely kind of the way that, at least that I would approach it. Similar building concept for FanDuel. Yes, I don't play on FanDuel, guys. So, if you head over to Win Daily Sports, Ghost and Adam both play more on FanDuel than I do. So, our cheat sheets will have that in our projections, and they will give you way more FanDuel specific focus. But on a slate like today, the reality is the core is the same. I'm looking to build around the same core guys. Obviously, you don't have the same price enforcement concept with AD over there, but same general rule applies. So hopefully that this is helpful, guys. This is something that I like doing. I like talking about, how I go through my process and how I use, not only, free tools, like I pointed you guys over to Popcorn Machine, but guys, if you head over, these projections have just been incredibly accurate this year, and Ghost does just a phenomenal job of working through and getting these out to our user base, essentially real time as news is breaking. So hopefully you guys are taking advantage of this. Listen, if you missed the start of the show, head on over to Twitter, follow me at 2Lock Sports. The promo code right now to join Win Daily Sports is BOWL55, BOWL 55. In honor of Super Bowl 55, you get 55% off your first month of gold membership here. $13 for 1 month. Give us a try, and I promise you, there is no team that you're going to find out there that is going to put as much time into their content as we do, tries to deliver consistency both in the message that we write about and then ultimately the transparency, and that's what we play. So, we were talking about it last night, guys. Adam and Ghost and I were 100% in on Clint Capella. He was our guy all night. And so last night, when Clint Capella decided that he was going to be PJ Tucker and chill in the corner instead of, racking up 30 rebounds like every other center has done against the Nets, we were right in the same boat tilting it as you. So, I bring that up because not everybody is going to, not everybody is going to have the same, the same transparency that we do. So I definitely recommend, you guys coming over and, checking this out. Popcorn Machine's a great tool. Yep. Any other gem sites you use for advanced stats? I will tell you, I don't know. So this is a good question from Jared. So one other place that I would go, if you go to NBA.com, I know it's like, it'd be silly to not think you could start there, but if you go to NBA.com, their advanced stats are amazing. The only problem that I do have for them, if you have used them before, you guys will know they're a little slow to load. But the amount of data that they have there is tremendous. They will give you all sorts of pace statistics, defensive efficiency statistics, anything that you can use. I'm not sure if it's downloadable. I'll take a look. I haven't used it for that, but definitely a good place. Ron, thank you. Not even a way I was thinking about players correlating. This is why we do these shows, because I think sometimes we write about it. You guys have probably heard us talk about leverage before, and maybe it hasn't always clicked. So hopefully this helps. Guys, head on over to Win Daily Sports. Enjoy this slate tonight. We got 4 full games. Let's win some money tonight. Let's have some fun. And we will talk to you guys soon. All right, we're out of here.